right, moving on to the next few sections. So when you look at the SRF, one of the changes that we did make is now the PI signature is on the same page as the request that we're doing. So either it's a new subaward or it's an amendment. So then this way we know that the PI has approved that time and money. That's the biggest part that we're asking them to prove. The pieces of information on the first page, for the most part, most of the investigators aren't going to know that information anyway, and so they're not really approving it. The main thing we need the investigator to approve is the amount of time and the funding, the scope of work, the budget justification. So now most of that information is now tied on the second page. And so we also wanted to split out the two sections for new subaward and amendment because we don't need all of the information that we collect for new subawards at amendment stage. And we wanted to highlight some of the differences in amendments. And I'll get to that in a second. So one of the differences, we now just have a section for new. So if it's a new subaward, you fill out this section on the SRF and you don't need to fill out the amendment section. We added a section for prime sponsor. So if there's flow through, sometimes we issue a subaward off of an incoming subaward. It does happen. And so it's good just to identify them there. The RAS award ID, that's the A number, the project ID. The project ID might be the most important piece of information that we need from a system setup perspective, because when we create the SC number, we create it under that specific project ID. So the project ID, the SC number gets created under that very specific project ID. And once it's created, the subcontracts team can't move it to a different project ID. And so we definitely need that piece of information before we set up the subaward. If the department wants to manage the subs under different project IDs or under a different project ID in general, that needs to be requested before we receive the sub out request, because we can't create the SC number until that project ID has been created. And so we do need that at the very beginning. We've also added in well, this was in there before, I should say we added it. But now under the uniform guidance, we are required to provide our subrecipients the total estimated period and the total estimated amount. Those are data fields that we have to include, and they're on the FDP templates as well. For all federal subawards, we need that information. And so if it's not on there, we will be sending it back. We do understand that sometimes we don't know if they're going to extend past the first year. That's okay. You can go ahead and put down the first year of information under the total estimated as well. But if you know that it's, I'm just going to use an NIH grant. If you know it's an R01 and the sub is going to be on there for all 5 years, go ahead and put down all 5 years. We have had a few institutions come back to us and ask us for that information. So it just helps us make sure we have the correct information. I've also added in an extra box for fixed rate. I'm going to just mention this again. Just remember that fixed rate is only NIH. If you are working on a project that you want to pay like fixed rate and it's not NIH, we do need to go back and check the sponsor's policies and see if that fits cost reimbursable or fixed price. Because if it's fixed price and it's a federal project, we do need prior approval to issue a fixed price, fixed amount subaward. Oh, and one additional comment, the dollar amounts now go out to 2 decimal places. The form no longer rounds. We changed that because sometimes some of the budgets did go out to 2 decimal places, and so we want to make that consistent.